Then Azog laughed, and he lifted up his head to let forth a great yell of triumph. But the cry died in his throat, for he saw that all his host in the valley was in a rout, and the dwarves went this way and that, slaying as they would, and those that could escape from them were flying south, shrieking as they ran. Hey everyone, Yoiston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we are looking at the history of Azog and his spawn Bolg, chieftains of the Orcs and bitter enemies of the Dwarves. Related and helpful articles and videos will be in the description, and cards for more information on these characters. My friends, thank you all for joining me today. Let's begin our tale. Sometime after Sauron sent Orcs into the Dark of Moria, in 2480 of the Third Age, a great chieftain rose to prominence among the Orcs, rallying the Orcs of the Misty Mountains and Moria in particular behind him. His name was Azog, and we know little about his early history, but it's likely that his strength and prowess as a warrior gave him that spot of leadership. He entered into the greater histories of Middle-earth in 2790 of the Third Age, when the old King Thror of the Longbeards, who had fled the wrath of Smaug and his kingdom under the mountain, came to the eastern gate of Moria with his friend, Nar. After waiting for his king to return to him out of the Dark of Moria, Nar would behold a terrible and unforgettable sight of tragedy and horror. Azog and his minions had captured Thror, slew him, and threw him forth from the gates. Azog had beheaded him, and carved his own name in his head in dwarven runes, throwing it before Nar from an unseen place. Azog called them dwarf beggars, telling Nar to return home, and to tell the others that he was king and master in the dwarven halls now and would tolerate no dwarves. Nar attempted to take Thror's head, but Azog demanded he drop it, and rather gave him a bag of coins of small worth as a mocking fee. Nar fled, crying for his lord and for his friend, while the Orcs further mutilated Thror's body, feeding him to crows. But in his pride, Azog had done unthinkable evil to a dwarf of great worth, one whom I assume he knew was the king of the Longbeards, since he then addressed himself as the new king of Moria. The Orc chieftain could not have imagined what devastation he wrought upon himself and his kin, for he had given his own name, a name no dwarf would ever forget, to enemies who proved to be far stronger and more wrathful against the evils that the Orc had done than any other enemy Azog could ever imagine. The dwarves of all lands would not abide this evil, and all 7 clans came together to bring war to the Orcs, to annihilate them as best as they could, which would rout the Orcs for over a century to come. Through their unmatched strength, their peerless weapons, and the fire of their anger, the dwarves could not be matched in the Misty Mountains, though the Orcs put up great resistance against them, and there would be no safety for Azog beneath any mountain or stone. The war of the dwarves and Orcs broke out in full, and finally, in the last battle, the Battle of Azanulbizar in 2799, which took place at the very site of Thror's death after it had occurred, Azog was taunted from his lair of Moria by Thror's nephew, Dáin of the Iron Hills, as many dwarves yelled Azog's name themselves. They searched for him. Dáin's taunts worked, and Azog came to fight him, but the dwarf was half blind with rage and was exhausted by the battle, that his powerful stroke went astray, as Azog evaded him, and the Orc kicked him, stumbling Dáin, which gave Azog an opportunity to behead yet another dwarf of Durin's line, but due to Dáin's armor, Azog simply broke the dwarf's neck instead, slaying him all the same. But before Azog could rejoice in his evil victory, he realized that his forces were in a rout, his guards were slain, and his army was retreating. The dwarves could not be stopped. They were not there for Moria, to take back their home. They were there for him. They fought an entire war for this vengeance, and would not forsake this opportunity to get it. Even as Azog fled the battle for the dwarven halls that he called home, a young dwarf with a red axe, Dáin, the son of Náin, came to avenge his father and grand-uncle, and he caught Azog before the doors, and in his wrath and strength, Dáin beheaded Azog, taking such a vengeance. The dwarves had what they had sought, though they had paid for it with many lives. Azog's head was put on a stake, the bag with coins of small worth that he had given Nar was stuffed in his mouth, and the debt was paid. Yet, not so, for vengeance is costly, both in the need for and payment of it. and it does little for those slain for or in spite of it. But Azog and many of his orcs would never take another dwarven life again, and his people remained scattered and defeated for many decades after this. However, Azog had a son and heir named Bolg, whose domain was Mount Gundabad, another dwarven site of great importance, for that had once been the awakening place of Durin the Deathless, eldest father of all dwarves. The orcs would regroup in their strongholds, and the cycle of vengeance was not forgotten, but reawakened. For in 2941 of the Third Age, Thorin's company escaped Goblin Town, and the great Goblin King was slain by Gandalf and his sword Glamdring. After their passing, the orcs of the north mustered a great host of goblins, and they came upon Erebor suddenly, as Bolg led them, along with a host of wargs and bats. This sudden attack reunited dwarves, elves, and men, along with the hobbit and wizard that were there as well, and the eagles and skin changer that came thereafter. The free peoples fought a great battle, the Battle of Five Armies, against these orcs and their allies. And while Dáin Ironfoot was recently come from the Iron Hills, it would instead be Thorin Oakenshield, the grandson of King Thror, that Bolg would have his vengeance upon. Bolg's host and bodyguard were too thick about him, and Thorin sustained great wounds, and was defended by his two nephews Fili and Kili until they too perished, and he was defeated. But in the end, Thorin still outlived Bolg, though his hours were numbered. For the great skin changer Beorn, a mighty and powerful bear, crushed Bolg himself and slew the son of Azog. Thorin would soon follow Bolg to the grave, another victim of this cycle of vengeance between orc and dwarf. Bolg had no heir that we know of, and with the end of the Battle of Five Armies, this bloody rivalry between the bloodline of Azog and this direct line of Thror was ended, as were both direct bloodlines nearly so. For other than Thorin's sister Dís, her close kin had fallen in this bitter cycle, and her cousin Dáin became the new king under the mountain. But both lines would come to their ends. With that somber but no less true note, our tale of Azog and Bolg comes to its end. From this tale of these two evil and spiteful orc leaders, we see that vengeance must be tempered against justice, and we must beware the cycle of vengeance, lest we and those we love are caught in its trap. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have enjoyed this epic character's history on Azog and Bolg. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend. What are your thoughts on these villains? Let me know in the comments below. They present a very interesting dynamic that is opposed to the dwarves in a rivalry that started thousands of years even before this tale. And these two characters are certainly ones that we love to hate. If you would like to support the channel, please consider getting some candles from our friends Mythologie Candles through the link in the description below, and please check out our merch and Patreon. Thanks to our Valar tier patrons and YouTube members, Peter Shepard, Jonathan Putin, and Mark Kralik, Blair Scout and Merton, John Hume, Sam McBee, Matt Zabach, Elizabeth Calvert, Maz Gibbs, Reese Jenkins, Anna Petrolik, Anthony Harmon, Dorwin Gray, Arthur Merlin, Dill Davis, Kingswald Project, and Robert Bogue, our newest Valar tier patron. Thank you so much to all of our patrons and YouTube members. Please subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today. And I'll see you all again next Sunday with a video on what made Sauron so powerful. You all are the best, my friends. Thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.